right, David, I wanted to start with you here. I know you first wrote the script in the late 90s, so it was making me wonder, what is the biggest difference between the first draft you had written back then compared to what we see in the final film now?
Really, in terms of screenwriting, no difference. I didn't change one word. I did one draft. A couple of things are different in that I cut some scenes that were in that we did shoot, because that, in a way, in the editing room, that's your second draft, So they were scenes that I saw made redundant by how the dynamic of other scenes. But that's very common. And the only other changes are the normal production changes. For example, we're shooting in Athens. I had not anticipated 20 years ago that I would ever shoot this movie in Athens. But once we were all taking full advantage of embracing completely Athens, the Mediterranean, all of that, the texture of the city, this ancient city, 3,000 years old. I had thought of the movie as taking place in Toronto, which is a very young city by comparison, obviously. But those are normal production things. It's a lot of movie making for me is found art. You find something that you never expected, either in a person or an actor or a location, and you embrace it because it's stimulating and it's exciting and it's unexpected. So those things. But in terms of screenwriting, no changes.
What about when it comes to the special effects of it all? Because your work in the body horror realm has always been next level, but are there any new tools or techniques in that particular sector that let you accomplish something on Crimes of the Future that you never would have imagined was possible at the point that you first wrote the script?
A lot of things. Visual effects has come along beautifully and wonderfully, and it's just an amazing tool. I mean, of course, I've used it in the past. Even Existence, we created some creatures that were completely CG, but now it's relatively inexpensive, relatively quick to manifest and to experiment with, and some of the tools in the Sark, for example, we created physically, and they were puppeteered. But in other scenes where we couldn't do puppeteering, they are completely CG, and they're based on what we created physically. And they're so good, you really cannot tell the difference. I mean, it's really quite remarkable, and very affordable. So it allows you such freedom in terms of the way you position the cameras and what the actors can do. It's really fabulous.
Can confirm, I couldn't tell the difference. So great success in that department.
Thank you.
All right, Scott. So I was reading something that you said about trusting the words and seeing where they took you. So is there any particular scene in the film that surprised you in that respect, where you walked onto set with one particular idea, but then the words took you to a completely unexpected place?
I mean, I think if you're doing your job even remotely correctly, and anything that should be happening at all times, just like David talks about with directing, I mean, to not be too, for lack of a better way to say it, precious, you got to reinvent it that day. I think that's the goal, whether I'm successful at that or not. That's the constant struggle as I get older to keep getting better at that, to be able to surprise yourself in the moment. But probably my first scene where I shot with Viggo, that one shot we did, where that walking down the street, and we did it as a oneer, what bubbled up and what was happening, how we shot it. Yeah, that was all surprising, and where the scene went, I loved. So yeah, that was my favorite, probably for me, just in terms of selfishly as an actor, my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah. Scott's rhythm in that scene is really extraordinary and very unexpected.
Yeah, it's
and
weird.
It provoked other things from Viggo too.
Yeah.
And I think we just did one or two takes, didn't we?
Yeah, it was wild.
Kind of twisting that idea around a little bit and jumping off a quote that I was just reading from Kristen. She said something to the effect of, the actors spent every day being like, what the fuck are we doing? But then you all sat down and you watched the movie and everything became crystal clear. So Scott, was there anything that you shot for the film that had you saying, what the fuck am I doing on set the most? And then you saw the film and it was above and beyond anything you could have imagined.
I mean, I think, to be honest, the movie to me is exactly how I would have loved for it to turn out and watch, because whatever she's saying, I think I understand what she's saying, but you immerse yourself so deeply in this world that it ceases to be absurd or different or futuristic or anything. And that becomes normalized. It has to, so you can play the scene. So watching the movie was, it's a relief for what we were doing for those 6 or 7 weeks in Greece, showing up on screen. For me as an actor, where I am in my career, that's just so amazing, because that doesn't happen all the time. Oftentimes there's a big discrepancy between what you think you're shooting and what ends up on the screen. And that's the great joy of this movie for me.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I've heard from many actors, in fact, that they say to me, they confess to me, I really don't know what I'm doing. And I say, that's great. Just keep doing going. What you don't know.
Yes.
Because they do know what they're doing. And Kristen absolutely knew what she was doing,
she does.
If unconsciously. And honestly, it's a little like life, isn't it? I mean, at any moment in my life, I can look around and say, what the fuck am I doing? And I have no idea, really. But somehow I still function. So that's just a life reality that Kristen is expressing. And she was, incredibly focused and precise and fantastic in the movie. So somewhere she knew what she was doing.
Yes.
Without that quality, life and also movies would be quite boring and too familiar. So I think that comes from the fact that you guys do something that I don't think anyone's really seen put on screen this particular way. So I love that quality of it.
Well, I love that you say that. I really do. And I'm going to quote you.
Please do. I very much mean it. David, I was watching another interview you did where you spoke about the value of watching film on devices like an iPad. And I have that argument, or I should say I have that conversation all the time. So I appreciated that stance on it. And it was making me wonder, when you're making Crimes of the Future, are you picturing yourself making a movie for the big screen, or has that idea completely evolved into something new for you?
Even as far back as Shivers and Rabbit, my first 2 sort of commercial movies, I was always aware that more people would see it on television than they would on a big screen. Even then, because you have a release, it's in the theaters. After that, it's on television. And so I made sure that because in those days, the television screen was 4:3. It was very square, but we were shooting more widescreen. So I made sure that those movies were framed in such a way that they could be shown on television and still not sort of deranged in terms of the framing and the composition. So for me, this is not a new thing. I mean, I assume that more people are going to see Crimes of the Future on their, Apple Watch than they are going to see it in a big theater.
That might be too small.
The other thing is that you don't have to make, the thing is that the resolution and the color balance and everything of the devices these days, compared with the old days of black and white television, for example, it's so good that I don't have to make any concessions in terms of composition and so on. It works on a huge screen like the one in Cannes. That was probably the biggest screen we're ever going to see it on, with 2,400 or 2,500 people watching. It'll absolutely look great on your iPad. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And also on your phone.
You said in the interview that when you have the iPad, it makes it even more immersive because it's so close to your face. And I feel like you put it more eloquently than I ever have, but like, that's the feeling that I have, which is why I appreciate every format of screening.
Sure. It's like reading a book, you have it here, it's right here. It fills your field of vision. What's the problem? The resolution. If the resolution and the color and the sound are good, it's good. And to me, that still counts as a cinematic experience. I think that that's where cinema is going. I think that theaters there will be fewer of them. There'll be niche sort of venues where the only specific things, maybe Marvel movies only, I'm not sure, will be shown there. And for the rest of us, it'll be watching on our own private screens.